Hey everybody, good afternoon. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Come on in. I've been trying to verify some information that I had made a note on, and I'm so frustrated. Please let me know if anyone out there had read that Zaina Carnoto's father, he did an interview where he stated that he spoke to Zaina the night of the murders around midnight. And she told her dad that her and Ethan were at home watching a movie. If you can find that interview, I can't find it. My note, it looks like I wrote November 16th, 2023 interview, but I can't find it. I'm finding articles and I'm finding interviews where he's stating that he spoke to Zaina at midnight and she was fine, but I'm not finding the piece that says they were at home watching a movie. I don't know, guys. I, it's like I'm just like blown away that I cannot find that information because I can find everything else. I can find what he talked about the bruises, how Zaina put up a fight against the killer or killers, that he knew about the code to the door lock, um, and that maybe the person entered through the side door. I cannot find the part where it says he talked to Zaina at midnight and she told her dad that Ethan and her were at home watching a movie. I can't find it. But anyway, I'm going to let it go for now because I can't find that. I can't find that article, so I can't detail that. But I have a lot of other stuff to detail. So let me catch you up to some things. And first, let me tell you, Happy Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day to you. That's a heart, sending it your way. Happy Valentine's Day. Enjoy this day, even if you're single, right? Hey, go do something for yourself. Go out, have dinner. For me and my husband, we're just making steaks for dinner. Um, just a quiet day. He's pretty busy. I just did wasn't feeling too good today, so I just did a little bit of work, and then I'm gonna cook dinner later. And I do have a gift for him. So you know, we'll have our time together later. Um, but I want to I want to talk about eyewitness testimony, but it's so many parts to it, and it's kind of like I don't want to start with eyewitness testimony. I kind of want to catch you up to a few things that's been going on with hidden horror. So for the last 2 weeks, I basically was focused on the Jennifer Crumbley trial and verdict watch. Um, if you don't know, I have a whole playlist on Ethan Crumbley. Ethan Crumbley is Jennifer Crumbley's son. He was a mass shooter in the state of Michigan, and he killed four students at his high school, Oxford High School, and he pled guilty. He received life without the possibility of parole, and right now he's going through the steps to appeal that. I guess he wants the possibility of parole at some point. But during his Miller hearing, was a lot of testimony and things like that. So the judge did sentence him to life without parole. So the significance of not just that being a mass shooting, but this is the first time in the United States where parents have actually been charged with a level of homicide. His parents, Jennifer Crumbley and James Crumbley, were both charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter for the death of the 4 victims. There were other victims that were harmed but were not unalived. So I was turning my focus and attention on Jennifer Crumbley's trial because it lasted about 10 days, and the jury, they deliberated about 11 hours, and they came back with a verdict of guilty. So this is the first time in the United States that a parent of the mass shooter has been charged with a level of homicide and been convicted. So to wrap all of that up, her sentencing is coming up in April, and then Dad, James Crumbley, will have his trial in the early part of March. So I was focusing all of my efforts in that endeavor. Now, as I said, I'm kind of moving back and focusing my attention back on the Idaho 4. As I had said prior to the trial start of Jennifer Crumbley, that I was working on a little mini series. I'm calling it a mini series because it's things that I've already talked about in various videos, but I'm giving more focus to certain topics. And it's going to be about a collection of about 8 videos. And then the last video will be my video that takes all of these 8 videos and leads up to the idea that I feel someone in law enforcement could have been the killer or killers of the Idaho 4. It could be multiple killers, in my opinion. So all of these videos individually will come together. I will try to pull them all together because this would be a massive video if I did one large video. So I decided to break it down, especially after I got sick. I was extremely sick at one point. When I first thought of this mini series, it was like I thought of it. I started to kind of filter out the different topics, and then I got sick. So when I started to get well, I didn't want to do videos when I was sick. So when I started to get well, I had the idea of doing one subject at a time because I was very weak. I'm still weak. I'm still under the weather. However, I've decided to take each topic in each video and kind of explore that topic. And then in the end, I will culminate with all of the ideas put together as to why I feel the way I feel. I'll try to lay it out for you. So this particular video is about eyewitness testimony, not expert, eyewitness testimony, how unreliable it's been. It's been proven, it's been shown. There's been studies. There's been a whole area of law in just going back and actually having convictions overturned. And primarily, these convictions are being overturned not because of DNA. It's because of eyewitness testimony, how you cannot rely on it. You cannot use it. You really want to have cases that have physical evidence, video evidence, fingerprints, not eyewitness testimony. So the reason this is an important video and an important idea is because this entire case with the Idaho 4 murders, it has a lot of issues. The one issue that I feel is a little bit overlooked is the 2 eyewitnesses, possibly a third eyewitness. Okay. And I might need to make myself a note. Let me see. Forget. My husband bought me a notepad. Do I want to write on that? Maybe easier to just send myself a note or put in my notes, my reading notes. Well, let's see. One second. I just want to type myself a note. Okay. How do I make a note? I have a newer phone, so okay. So we're talking about the third possible witness, and then I'm going to say nice and say possible police informants or people, they call them snitches. So that's something I didn't put in my notes. I have a lot of notes for this video because this idea that I'm going to lay out today, it's not complicated, but it's a lot of moving parts to it. And I have to demonstrate the importance of it. So I can't just say it in words. I have to show you, right? I have to prove my ideas, or what would I be worth if I'm just telling you things and I'm not supporting it. So this video is not that it's complicated, but it has some moving parts. And for me to go in and kind of dismantle the thoughts of others, I have to prove it. I feel that there has been just an acceptance of certain information, and I'm a thinker. I'm a logical person. I'm a logical thinker. And I just can't accept certain things because the mainstream media puts it out there. I have to assess, filter, kind of flush it out in my brain, process the information, and I see issues with the eyewitnesses, not just because historically, and I don't feel like I need to prove that. If someone feels like I need to prove that eyewitness testimony is not reliable, just type it into your search engine, or whatever videos you like to watch on whatever platform, because I don't want to promote a platform or website. But type that in, and then you will discover yourself how eyewitness testimony is not reliable. My background, my experience, my research, the knowledge that I received through my education, this is a known fact that eyewitness testimony is not reliable. And through the history of criminal processes, the criminal justice system, primarily convictions are overturned. You have the Innocence Project, you have all these different states forming groups, forming attorneys and advocates to review cases, because we know that some convictions did not have a lot of physical evidence. It did not have DNA. It didn't have uh, evidence left behind. It didn't have video surveillance, things like that. More technology now. So a lot of cases are now being reviewed because they lacked those types of physical evidence. They rely primarily on eyewitness testimony, which we know is extremely unreliable. And again, most convictions that are overturned are due to eyewitness testimony. So I don't have to prove that. But if you don't agree, you can do some research on your own. But I'm not going to spend this time also proving that, because I have to prove so many parts of what I'm coming to speak about. I'm going to focus on that and not proving just the idea that it's not reliable. This is not my opinion. This is pretty much a fact. So I feel in Idaho 4, we really don't want to rely so much on the eyewitness testimony, because I feel that could be problematic, and I'm going to demonstrate why. And also, we really want to rely on the video surveillance. We want to rely on any cameras, any photos, more evidence, more physical evidence, any DNA, any shoe impressions, even latent footprints, tire impressions, all other realms of evidence, versus primarily upholding eyewitness testimony, or, as I just said, if we want to say police informants, where they're getting information from other people, or snitches, things like that. We really want to focus on more so the physical evidence, which we really don't hear about, right? We're hearing a narrative, we're given a narrative, but we're not really hearing a lot of information outside of the sheath with the touch DNA, which I've done several parts of videos where I talk about the touch DNA. I've shared some information on my Facebook page in horror about touch DNA and how, it's a very small amount of DNA, but how easily that touch DNA can be placed on an object. I don't think we need to even go there, but I'll just say that the touch DNA can easily be transferred. A small portion of DNA can be transferred to something else where you've never touched the item, but maybe you touch something else, and then that has been transferred over to this item. I'm not saying that's what happened in this case, but I'm saying I think we want to hear more about the physical evidence, and we really don't hear about that. Actually, it's been said not only that Brian Kohlberger did not have a connection to these victims, but there was no evidence found, including the alleged possible murder weapon or weapons. That wasn't found, and then there was no evidence. Now, do I know that for a fact? No, but I'm going off of some of the courtroom testimony, some of the information in the motions. But we will see at trial, right? If there is a trial. Right now, it is an unknown date. It will probably not be this year, due to the prosecutor wanting to have a trial outside of the time that school is in, and not just the university, but regular school. So I think they want to set a trial during the summer where students would not be. There's a high school that's close to the courtroom, so they don't want to have all these people emerging onto the courtroom building with the high school close by. And then the university, they prefer for it to be out of session. Now, summer session, it goes, but it's fewer people there. So I guess they're considering that, which typically you don't set a trial around those type of circumstances, but I guess it's being considered. So all in all, it may not be a trial in summer 2024. Maybe it will possibly be summer of 2025, which means that Brian Kohlberger would have already been jailed for approximately 2.5 years before a trial. So that's really unfortunate. But I wanna try to lay certain things out, and I'm going to try to stay on task, but it's a lot of pieces. So I want to start with just going over quickly in the mini series. I was going to do that collection of videos. Some of the videos that I've already done were how the killer was comfortable at 1122 King Road. That was very apparent to me. You can go and check that video out. I did a video specifically about the K-bar knife, how an attack, a victim would have very chance of surviving that type of attack. And this was a very vicious attack, but just the bleeding out. And I talked a little about the history of the K-bar knife, how it had been used in the military and law enforcement, and how it was really a weapon for combat. Okay. I have a whole video on that. You can refer to that. I talked about did Kaylee or any of the roommates have a stalker? There was information from Kaylee's family and also others that Kaylee had a stalker leading up into her passing. And the idea of if there was a stalker and what that means and how important it is and how it could have impacted and led up to the murders. I would advise you to check out that stalker video. It has a lot of good information there. So those are 3 of the videos in the series, okay, that have already been done. Now, today is the expert, excuse me, I don't know why I want to keep saying expert. I mean, eyewitness testimony, how is not reliable video. So that's the video today. And then I have a video that I'm going to do talking about the 1122 King Road house. And if you think that there was a company that did crime scene cleanup. And the reason I think that overall is because of how I feel like not only did I have a gut feeling that it could have been a possible crime scene cleanup by a professional company, not the people that came to the house. I think that is totally different. When the people were called over to the house um, about approximately 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, that is not crime scene cleanup. I think that is tampering with evidence and waiting all those hours. You don't know what the people were doing, so that is tampering with evidence. What I'm saying is, when the house was torn down and there was no DNA, no blood, and also just seeing how thin the walls were and how the structure was built, it made me feel like there could have possibly been a crime scene cleanup. And I can recall when they removed the property not too long after the murders, and they decided to return the property, different items to family members, things like that, and possibly the surviving roommates. I always questioned that move because I didn't see the urgency in that. But I'm going to do a whole video about crime scene cleanup, okay? So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do a video about the 911 call. And again, what was in that call? What wasn't in that call? Why hasn't this call been released at this point? Does the call even exist? We don't know. So I'm going to do a video about that. I'm going to do a video about why the police kept the murder, the crime scene evidence so quiet, so close to the vest, and how I feel that the public has kind of been misled. So I'm going to do a video about that as well. So there's a few more videos to roll out, about 3, and then I'm going to culminate, pull all these videos, all these ideas together on who I feel is probable to have committed the murders of the Idaho Four, in my opinion. So I'm going to pull all of it together, and hopefully it makes sense when I'm done. So today I'm going to talk about eyewitness testimony, particularly in the Idaho 4 case. Who am I referring to? What am I talking about? What is this video all about, right? When I say eyewitness testimony, this is, and I probably should give you a definition. I will look up one really quick. This is the idea that the people that were at the scene, at the property, 1122 King Road, because they are technically unharmed, unhurt, uninjured, we want to label them survivors of this terrible quadruple murder. They would be looked upon as witnesses, as eyewitnesses, because they were there allegedly. If that is true, if they were there the night into the morning of the murders, they would be considered eyewitnesses. And what they have to say, I believe in this case, people have given it great weight, even though we know eyewitnesses, they're not reliable. What they say is not reliable. What they believe happened, they're typically not reliable. But we've given that a lot of credence in this case. So I want to talk about it. I want to talk about their statements. I want to talk about what they said, they saw or heard, and is it reliable? Does it make sense? Does it gel together? I'm going to tell you, of course not. Everything in this case does not make sense. It's full of inconsistencies, contradictions, and I don't want to say lies, but I have to be honest. It doesn't, a lot of what they said doesn't make sense to a logically thinking person. I'm sorry. Lo sientos. I'm sorry in Espanol. Um, I just have to be honest. I have to be honest. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to go over it again. If anyone out there has the information for the article where Zaina's father said that Zaina and Ethan were at home at midnight watching a movie, please let me know. I cannot find the article. And I believe it was November 16, 2023, he said that. But I can't find the article, so it's very hard for me. I did find other articles, but I didn't find that piece, okay, that he spoke to her at midnight. Okay, so where do we start? I'm going to look up the definition of eyewitness testimony just so we have this on the record. Okay, I like to be clear about everything. And I didn't even think about this at the time because I don't like to assume what level of knowledge people have. Okay, I don't want to do that because this platform is for education purposes. So anytime we gather and we come together, I want to also be sensitive to people's different levels of knowledge. So I like to start and lay a foundation and then um, detail and support what I'm saying. So we're going to start at a level foundation. What is eyewitness testimony? Eyewitness testimony is the account a bystander or victim gives in the courtroom describing what that person observed that occurred during the specific incident under investigation. Ideally, this recollection of events is detailed. However, this is not always the case. Okay, so I just got that right off of Google. Okay, nothing special. I didn't bring my law book out or anything like that. I just want to give you a basic foundation for where we're going in this video because I want you to be able. I want you to be able to view things from a lens, a criminal lens, a questioning lens, a lens that dissects, detects, investigates information. So you're not in the mindset that you're just going to listen to what someone says and be accepting of the information. No, we're going to talk about it. We're going to review it. We're going to go over it. Okay. So that's what we're going to do now. So let me just I have to go to some resources out here. Okay. Now I'm going to start with this article. It's from nobaproject.com. I'm going to start with this article because really it's no easy way to lay this out. I know exactly what I want to say, but I don't want to just get right to it. I want to lay that foundation for why my thoughts are the way they are. Okay. So this article is titled Eyewitness Testimony and Memory Biases. Is by Carol Laney and Elizabeth F. Loftus. Is Reed College, University of California, Irvine. And it doesn't have a date on it, okay? We'll get started because the article is lengthy and I'm not going to read every part of it. is linked on the Hidden Horror Facebook page. Please review it at your convenience, where you can sit and read all of this information. But I'm going to read quite a bit, but not all of it, okay? So here we go. Eyewitnesses can provide very compelling legal testimony, but rather than recording experiences flawlessly, their memories are susceptible, I apologize, to a variety of errors and biases. They, like the rest of us, can make errors in remembering specific details and can even remember whole events that did not actually happen. In this module, we discuss several of the common types of errors and what they can tell us about human memory and its interactions with the legal system. Now, I know you might be wondering, like, what is all this about? Um, I'm using I'm using this as a foundation because we're going to talk about both eyewitnesses, and there possibly are others that haven't been disclosed. But we're going to talk about what we know they said they saw. And once we talk about what they said they saw, we'll then dissect, review, investigate if it makes any sense or if it's even true or if it's conflicting, right? Because we have a lot of contradictory information in this Idaho 4 murders, and we got to talk about it. We can't ignore it. We can't ignore it because we need to find the killer or killers. We need to help law enforcement, and we also need to make sure that there is integrity in this investigation, that there was solid police work done, and that when justice is served to the right person or persons, okay? So let's get started. So I might skip some parts of this. If you want to read it all, you can read it at your own leisure, but I just don't have the time and voice to read all of it. Eyewitness testimony is what happens when a person witnesses a crime or accident or other legally important event and later gets up on the stand and recalls for the court all the details of the witnessed event. It involves a more complicated process than might initially be presumed. It includes what happens during the actual crime to facilitate or hamper witnessing, as well as everything that happens from the time the event is over to the later courtroom appearance. So they're saying your memory of what happened, your testimony, it starts from when the crime happens or when the event happens up until testimony, because you're recounting it, you're reliving it, you're reviewing that in your mind, okay? The eyewitness may be interviewed by the police and numerous lawyers, describe the perpetrator to several different people, and make an identification of the perpetrator, among other things. So they're saying when you have an eyewitness, they're going to encounter different levels of law enforcement. That could be people from the state or prosecutor. These are the attorneys. And then you can have policing, law enforcement, police that may ask you questions, may interview, may bring you in, may ask you to write a statement, okay? May take a video of your statement. And when I say take a video, I mean record a video, okay? When an eyewitness stands up in front of the court and describes what happened from her own or his own perspective, this testimony can be extremely compelling. It is hard for those hearing this testimony to take it with a grain of salt or otherwise adjust its power. But to what extent is this necessary? So they're saying when you have an eyewitness and they get up on the stand, the juror is going to lean in. They're interested in what you have to say and what you saw. And it's very important testimony, okay? The problem is the testimony is not always accurate and reliable. That is the problem, okay? Okay. There is now a wealth of evidence from research conducted over several decades suggesting that eyewitness testimony is probably the most persuasive form of evidence presented in court, but in many cases, its accuracy is dubious. There is also evidence that mistaken eyewitness evidence can lead to wrongful conviction, sending people to prison for years or decades, even to death row for crimes they did not commit. Faulty eyewitness testimony has been implicated in at least 75% of DNA exoneration cases, more than any other cause. In a particularly famous case, a man named Ronald Cotton was identified by a rape victim, Jennifer Thompson, as her rapist and was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. So this story right here, Mr. Cotton's story, anybody that studied criminal justice, political science, pre-law, different degrees like that, we know about Mr. Cotton. This was a terrible, terrible case of mistaken identity. He had someone that looked just like him, almost his twin, and they had an excellent eyewitness victim. She was very strong, she was very compelling, very believable. But guess what? She made a mistake, not because she was trying, not because she didn't believe it. She believed Mr. Cotton was her rapist. She believed it. She testified. She had been prepared. She was strong. She was consistent. But guess what? She was wrong. She made a mistake. This is why we know through law enforcement, people in law enforcement, we'll take the witness statement, but we know we can't put everything in it because most of the time it's just not accurate. But let me continue on. Let me pick up where I left off. In a particularly famous case, a man named Ronald Cotton was identified by rape victim Jennifer Thompson as her rapist and was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. After more than 10 years, he was exonerated and the real rapist identified based on DNA evidence. They're not giving you the details, but this was part of a case where this was considered an inaccurate conviction. He was one of the few people that got selected by the Innocence Project, and through DNA evidence, his conviction was overturned. But I believe this is the case where he was actually in prison and there was someone that looked just like him and he was admitting to the rape. This had to be turned over. He got these attorneys from the Innocence Project, and once they were able to get the real rapist DNA, they were able to confirm it was not Mr. Cotton, but they looked very similar. And I believe she selected, and when I say she, I mean the victim, Mrs. Thompson. I believe she selected him out of a photo lineup, but they looked almost like they could be twins. So it's very hard when back then, the DNA evidence wasn't as popular. So we have some older cases that are now being overturned, primarily through DNA exonerations. Okay, so there's also hope, though, that many of the errors may be avoidable if proper precautions are taken during the investigative and judicial processes. Such psychological science has taught us what some of those precautions might involve, and we discuss some of that science now. Okay. I'll read a little bit more. In an early study of eyewitness memory, undergraduate subjects first watched a slideshow depicting a small red car driving and then hitting a pedestrian. Some subjects were then asked leading questions about what had happened in the slides. For example, subjects were asked, how fast was the car traveling when it passed the yield sign? But this question was actually designed to be misleading because the original slide included a stop sign rather than a yield sign. Later, subjects were shown pairs of slides. One of the pair was the original slide containing the stop sign. The other was a replacement slide containing a yield sign. Subjects were asked which of the pair they had previously seen. Subjects who had been asked about the yield sign were likely to pick the slide showing the yield sign. even though they had originally seen the slide with the stop sign. In other words, the misinformation in the leading question led to inaccurate memory. This phenomenon is called the misinformation effect because the misinformation that subjects were exposed to after the event apparently contaminates subjects' memories of what they witnessed. Hundreds of subsequent studies have demonstrated that memory can be contaminated by erroneous information that people are exposed to after they witness an event. The misinformation in these studies has led people to incorrectly remember everything from small but crucial details of a perpetrator's appearance to objects as large as a barn that wasn't there at all. Now, how I'm going to relate this to the Idaho 4 is when they are in a stressful environment and they are asked questions and they're I don't want to say recollecting what happened. If by somehow law enforcement enters in and provides details that they didn't say, um, if they include information that is known to law enforcement, but they didn't know, and they're telling them, they're giving them details, different things like that, that can affect the memory. That's what they're saying. They're saying when other things are introduced after something happens, that can affect how a person remembers an event. So, um, I want to jump down to an area that says identifying perpetrators. Just want to go over that just a little bit because we have some of that in Idaho 4. In addition to correctly remembering many details of the crimes they witnessed, eyewitnesses often need to remember the faces and other identifying features of the perpetrators of those crimes. Eyewitnesses are often asked to describe that perpetrator to law enforcement and later to make identification from books of mug shots or lineups. Here, too, there is a substantial body of research demonstrating that eyewitnesses can make serious but often understandable and even predictable errors. In most jurisdictions in the U.S., lineups are typically conducted with pictures called photo spreads or photo arrays rather than with actual people standing behind one-way glass. The eyewitness is given a set of small pictures of perhaps 6 or 8 individuals who are dressed similarly and photographed in similar circumstances. One of these individuals is the police suspect, and the remainder are foils or fillers, people known to be innocent of the particular crime under investigation. If the eyewitness identifies the suspect, then the investigation of that suspect is likely to progress. If an eyewitness identifies a foil or no one, then the police may choose to move their investigation in another direction. This process is modeled in laboratory studies of eyewitness identifications. In these studies, research subjects witness a mock crime, like, for example, a short video, and then are asked to make an identification from a photo or a live lineup. Sometimes the lineups are target present, meaning that the perpetrator from the mock crime is actually in the lineup, and sometimes they are target absent, meaning that the lineup is made up entirely of foils. The subjects or mock witnesses are given some instructions and asked to pick the perpetrator out of the lineup. The particular details of the witnessing experiences, the instructions, and the lineup members can all influence the extent to which the mock witness is likely to pick the perpetrator out of the lineup or indeed to make any selection at all. Mock witnesses and indeed real witnesses can make errors in 2 different ways. They can fail to pick the perpetrator out of a target present lineup by picking a foil or by neglecting to make a selection, or they can pick a foil in a target absent lineup, wherein the only correct choice is not to make a selection. Some factors have been shown to make eyewitness identification errors particularly likely. These include poor vision or viewing conditions during the crime, poor vision or viewing conditions during the crime. So we know that the Idaho 4 murder happened at night, late, it was dark. Was that house lighted or was it in the dark? Okay, you got to remember that. These include poor vision or viewing conditions during the crime, particularly stressful witnessing experiences. Were they under stress? Too little time to view the perpetrator or perpetrators. How much time did it take? If it's even true, how much time did it take? Okay, to view the perpetrator. Too much delay between witnessing and identifying. So when you witnessed a crime, how much time passed before you had to identify a possible perpetrator? And being asked to identify a perpetrator from a race other than one's own. So was that person a different race? The perpetrator a different race than yours? It is hard for the legal system to do much about most of these problems, but there are some things that the justice system can do to help lineup identifications go right. For example, investigators can put together high quality, fair lineups. A fair lineup is one in which the suspect and each of the foils is equally likely to be chosen by someone who has read an eyewitness description of the perpetrator but who did not actually witness the crime. This means that no one in the lineup should stick out and that everyone should match the description given by the eyewitness. Other important recommendations that have come out of this research include better ways to conduct lineups, double blind lineups, unbiased instructions for witnesses, and conducting lineups in a sequential fashion. Now, there's a whole section for memory biases. I'm not going to go over that. There's a whole section on false memory. I really don't want to touch the false memory because I really don't want to say that this was all of just false memory. I don't want to say that. I know if it's true or not? I have no idea, but I don't want to say it's false memory. Yeah, I don't want to say that, but you can read that. I'll just wrap it up with their conclusion. To conclude, eyewitness testimony is very powerful and convincing to jurors, even though it is not particularly reliable. Identification errors occur, and these errors can lead to people being falsely accused and even convicted. Likewise, eyewitness memory can be corrupted by leading questions, misinterpretations of events, conversations with co witnesses, and their own expectations for what should have happened. People can even come to remember whole events that never occurred. Okay. I don't want to go any further. Again, it's a great article. It's just so much to go over. We're like almost an hour in, and I haven't even touched on the other areas. So if you have time, take a read. I know that there can be issues with two witnesses talking to each other, sharing information, and formulating ideas of what happened or changing what happened. It happens. I'm not saying it happened in this case, but that is likely another consideration, but I'm not going to go there today. Um, so what I want to do, there are two articles that we need to go over. And then there is one video that I'm going to play that's about 4 minutes. And then we're going to get to how I pull all of this together. Okay. So the first article is on newsweek.com. It's dated April 28th, 2023. And it's written by Matthew Impelli. And it's titled What Bethany Funk Told Police About Brian Koberger, Idaho Murder Case. Bethany Funk, the roommate of the Idaho murder victims, previously spoke with police about the case, and she is now expected to meet with suspect Brian Kohlberger's legal team in the coming weeks. On Wednesday, lawyers for Funk filed a court document agreeing to sit down for an interview with Kohlberger's defense team in Nevada, where she currently resides. The agreement by Funk came shortly after Kohlberger's defense team attempted to force her to testify in the case's preliminary trial, claiming that she had information exculpatory to the defendant. Kohlberger, 28, was arrested in December and charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of felony burglary in the fatal stabbings of Katie Goncalves, 21, Madison Mogan, 21, Ethan Chapin, 20, and Zaina Cornodal, 20. Kohlberger has not entered a plea in the case, but his previous attorney in Pennsylvania, when he was arrested, said that his client was eager to be exonerated. Shortly after Kohlberger's arrest, the Moscow Police Department in Idaho released a probable cause affidavit detailing evidence determining that the 28-year-old was the suspect in the murders. The probable cause affidavit included some information that Funk told police when they arrived to the home near the University of Idaho where the murders occurred. The first mention of Funk in the probable cause affidavit confirmed that she and the other roommate, Dylan Morrison, were inside the King Road residence at the time of the homicides and were roommates to the victims. Bethany Funk's bedroom was located on the east side of the first floor of the King Road residence, the probable cause affidavit said. Later on in the affidavit, the Moscow Police Department said that on November 12, 2022, the night before the murders, Chapin and Cornodal were seen by Funk at a fraternity house from approximately 9 p.m. on November 12th to 1:45 a.m. on November 13th. Please remember this time. She's alleging that she saw them from 9 p.m. on November 12th to 1:45 a.m. on November 13th. Please remember that. Okay, that is a major point in this video. One of the major points. There's about 3 or 4 points, okay? But that was one of them. Okay, let's keep going. Bethany Funk also estimated that at approximately 1:45 a.m., Chapin and Cornodal returned to the King Road residence. Bethany Funk, also stated that Chapin did not live in the King Road residence but was a guest of Cornodal, the affidavit said. The affidavit also stated that Funk and Morrison both informed police that the other occupants of the 1122 King Road residence returned home on November 13th at around 2 a.m. local time and were asleep or at least in their rooms by approximately 4 a.m. The final mention of Funk in the affidavit states that police reviewed forensic downloads from her phone and determined that the homicides occurred between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffendorfer previously told Newsweek that the defense team's attempt to have Funk testify in the preliminary hearing was likely in hopes that she would offset comments about Kohlberger that were previously made by Morrison. So they're saying that, or they're estimating that whatever Bethany Funk was going to testify at the hearing, that they wanted Morrison to testify because they would be conflicting testimony. Newsweek reached out to Kelly Ann Viloria, Funk's attorney, for comment, but attorneys involved in the case are barred from commenting on it because of a gag order. Newsweek also reached out to Kohlberger's public defender, Ann Taylor, via email for comment. Okay. So that's one article. Okay. Now we have one more article. It's by it's on heavy.com. It's dated, it's updated January 2nd. So this article was written and it was updated January 2nd, 2024. Is by Jessica McBride and it's titled Dylan Mortensen. Excuse me. 5 facts you need to know. Dylan Mortensen is one of the two roommates who were not injured during the November 13th, 2022 knife attack murders of four University of Idaho college students in their off-campus rental house. Mortensen is mentioned by her initials DM in the police affidavit accusing graduate student Brian Koberger of murdering the students. His lawyer told Today that Koberger believes he will be exonerated. The affidavit, which was released publicly on January 5th, 2023, says that Mortensen saw the killer. However, 911 was not called until 11:58 a.m. Hours later, the police website on the case says. The affidavit says Mortensen froze and then locked her bedroom door. In past, authorities used Mortensen's observations to determine that the homicides occurred between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m., the affidavit says. Excuse me, my apologies. An anonymous Idaho law enforcement source told the New York Post that the 8-hour gap in reporting the crime has been something that we have puzzled over. We don't know if it was an issue of intoxication or of fear. Kaylee Goncalves, Ethan Chapin, Zana Kernodle, and Madison Mogan were stabbed to death in their off-campus rental home on November 13, 2022, police say on their website. The police affidavit accuses Koberger of stalking the student's home 12 times and leaving behind a sheet with DNA on it. The affidavit does not provide a motive. The other surviving roommate, Bethany Funk, does not feature in the affidavit as prominently as Mortensen does. Neither Mortensen nor Funk was attacked, police have said in previous news releases. Videos about Mortensen have had more than 24 million views on TikTok as people discuss theories in the case. Under a section on their website devoted to who is not believed to be involved, Moscow, Idaho police wrote 2 surviving roommates. Steve Goncalves, the father of Kaylee, told Today of the 2 surviving roommates. You got to remember these 2 girls were so upset that when they went outside after seeing this, one passed out. And the other one was so hyperventilating that the message wasn't clear enough for the operator. Here's what you need to know. Number 1, Mortensen heard sounds the morning of the murders, the affidavit says. Funk's room was on the first floor of the King Road residence, according to the affidavit. Mortensen's bedroom was on the southeast side of the second floor, which is the floor where 2 of the victims, Chapin and Kernodle, were also sleeping. The affidavit says both surviving roommates were interviewed by the police. Funk told police she had seen Chapin and Kernodle that night at the Sigma Chai House from 9 p.m. through 1:45 a.m., the affidavit says. Goncalves and Mogan were at a local bar and then a food truck before arriving home at 1:56 a.m., it says. By 4 a.m., all of the people in the house were in their rooms, the roommates told police, according to the affidavit. The affidavit describes various sounds heard by Mortensen the morning of the murders. According to the affidavit, Mortensen, again identified only by her initials, woke up at 4 a.m. to what sounded like Goncalves playing with her dog in one of the upstairs bedrooms. So she's hearing sounds. That's what that's saying. You can assume what you think is happening, but the main point is she's hearing noises, movement, shuffling up on that third floor. Okay. She heard a person she thought was Goncalves say something to the effect of, "There's someone here," the affidavit says. This voice might actually have been Cornado, who was probably on TikTok when the murders occurred around 4:12 a.m., the affidavit says. Mortensen told police she looked out of her bedroom but did not see anything, according to the affidavit. So this is even assuming that from the angle of her bedroom, she was able to see a nice amount of, spacing. Could she see Zana's room? We don't know, right? And the house is now torn down. So how do we show that? That's why we didn't want the house turned down. She opened the door a second time when she heard what she thought was crying coming from Cornado's room. It says, and then she heard a male voice say something to the effect of, "It's okay. I'm going to help you." If that's not law enforcement, that's first responders, law enforcement. At 4:17 a.m., a security camera nearby picked up distorted audio of what sounded like voices or a whimper, followed by a loud thud. The affidavit says, and a dog can also be heard barking numerous times starting at 4:17 a.m., the affidavit says. Mortensen told police she opened her door for the third time after she heard the crying and saw a figure clad in black clothing and a mask that covered the person's mouth and nose walking towards her. DM described the figure as 5'10" or taller, male, not very muscular, but athletically built with bushy eyebrows, the affidavit says. Now, this is seeing this at 4 a.m. I don't know if there are lights on. You could distinguish the color of the clothing. You see a mask. And again, who says a figure clad in black? That's law enforcement. He walked past her as she stood in a frozen shock phase and walked back towards the back sliding glass door, it says. So when they say he walked past her, does that imply that she is not any longer opening the door and looking out the door? Is she out of the bedroom? Is she into the living space? Is she in the hallway? Can she see Zana's room? We don't know, right? We just don't know. The affidavit then describes in great detail how people use video, cell phone, and DNA evidence to identify Kohlberger as the suspect. Dr. Judith F. Joseph, a clinical assistant professor of psychiatry in New York, told NBC News that traumatic shock responses are not uncommon. When your body is in shock and you think you're going to die or you think you're in a threatening situation, adrenaline surges your sympathetic nervous system and takes off. And you may experience a frozen state where consciously you know what's happening, but then a coping mechanism is for you to disassociate. Joseph said to NBC, "It's possible what happened with her was that she sort of went into a disassociation state and was just kind of confused and shocked and not really understanding what's going on," said Dr. Akeem Marsh, a clinical professor of psychiatry, to NBC, referring to Mortensen. In December, an Idaho pastor read a letter from Mortensen and Funk about the victims at a memorial service for them, according to CNN. According to CNN, Mortensen's letter described Coronado as the life of the party, but also a strong, intelligent, hardworking, and a beautiful person. She described Chapin as sweet and loving to Coronado, his girlfriend, and like an older brother to Mortensen. Mortensen described Mogan and Goncalves as the inseparable duo and said she considered them like second moms, CNN reported. My life was greatly impacted to have known these four beautiful people, the pastor read from Mortensen's letter, according to CNN. My people who changed my life in so many ways and made me so happy. I know it will be hard to not have the four of them in our lives, but I know Zayna, Ethan, Maddie, and Kaylee will want us to live life and be happy, and they will want us to celebrate their lives. According to News Nation, Mortensen's letter also read, I know somewhere Zayna and Ethan are together, keeping each other company, watching us and telling us it's okay and that we have each other. Maddie and Kaylee, the inseparable duo, the two best friends that were like sisters. On November 19, 2022, Moscow police wrote in a press release the cell phone used to call 911 belonged to one of the surviving roommates. Due to the ongoing investigation, the identity of the caller has not been released. They did not say whether the phone belonged to Mortensen or Funk. Detectives believe that on November 12th, the two surviving roommates had been out in the Moscow community separately but returned home by 1 a.m. Please remember, they were out in the Moscow community separately but returned home by 1 a.m. The two did not wake up until later on November 13th, police continued in that release. Initially, the 911 call made at 11:58 a.m. on November 13th requested aid for an unconscious person. The call was made from inside the residence on one of the roommates' cell phones. Moscow Police Department arrived shortly thereafter and found all four victims. This isn't much visible on Mortensen's Instagram account, which is set to private. Her profile picture is a photo showing her with Funk and the three female victims. You of Idaho, Pi Phi OK is all that Mortensen once read. Now it just reads Dylan M. Funk's Instagram page is also set to private and once read U of I. I'm not reading that. Mortensen's Facebook page has been deleted. Before it was deleted, the page says she is from Boise, Idaho, and it contains some old pictures. An old LinkedIn page and her name says she went to Boise Senior High School. Mortensen's TikTok page is set to private and she has no bio posted on it. She has 246 followers on TikTok. Mortensen was photographed in pictures with the victims that appeared on the victims' Instagram pages. One lucky girl to be surrounded by these people every day. Goncalves wrote the day of the murders with an Instagram photo that featured her with Coronado, Mogan, Mortensen, and Funk. Number 5, the roommates were described as quieter than their rowdier neighbors. Neighbors told the New York Post that roommates were quieter than their rowdy collegiate neighbors. The neighbors told the Post that small parties were hosted in the home, but that roommates were usually quiet by 10 p.m., the Post reported. They were sometimes seen sitting around a patio fire drinking beer, the Post reported. Okay, so glad to be done with that article because now wait a minute. I have one more article to go over. I'm sorry. Okay. This is the last article that I'm going to have to read. Where were Zayna Coronado and Ethan Chapin? 5-hour time gap still unexplained weeks on from Idaho murders. This is the independent.co.uk. Is dated December 6, 2022. And the writer is Rachel Sharp. 3 weeks on from the murders, there continues to be a huge, almost 5 hour gap between the time Coronado and Chapin were at the frat house party and the time they arrived back at the student house. The mystery continues to deepen around Zana Coronado and Ethan Chapin's final hours before they were brutally stabbed to death alongside Madison Morgan and Kaylee Goncalves in a student rental home in Moscow, Idaho. On the night of the 12th of November, Coronado and Chapin had gone to a fraternity party at Sigma Chi from 8 to 9 p.m. on the University of Idaho campus. The young couple then arrived back at the home on King Road that Coronado, Morgan, and Goncalves shared with two other female students at around 1:45 a.m. on November 13th. The four victims were all stabbed to death at around 3 a.m. or 4 a.m., their bodies lying undiscovered for several more hours. 3 weeks on from the murders, there continues to be an almost 5 hour gap between the time Coronado and Chapin were seen at the frat house party and the time they arrived back at the house where they were attacked. The two locations are only minutes apart on foot and are based in busy student areas close to Greek Road, where the University of Idaho's sorority and fraternity houses sit. Despite thousands of tips pouring in from the public desperate to catch the killer, investigators are still unable to account for the major lapse in time and have provided no explanation for where Coronado and Chapin may have been during these final hours. Coronato's mother, Kara Northington, has said she believes her daughter and her daughter's boyfriend were at a bar during this time. However, she confirmed that she does not know that for sure. On Monday, the Independent reached out to Moscow police for further information. Hours later, the department appeared to confirm that they have been unable to shed light on the matter, saying in an update that investigators are still investigating what occurred from approximately 9 p.m. on November 12th to 1:45 a.m. on November 13th, when Ethan Chapin and Zana Coronado were believed to be at the Sigma Chi house on the University of Idaho campus at 735 Nez Perce Drive. Investigators continue to urge anyone with information about any interactions, context, direction, and method of travel, or anything abnormal to come forward to help add context to what occurred. The lack of information about Coronado and Chapin's last known movements is at odds with the detailed narrative given about the final movements of the other two victims. On the night of the 12th of November, police said that best friends Goncalves and Morgan had spent the night at the Corner Club bar in downtown Moscow, arriving at around 10:30 p.m. and staying around 3 hours until around 1:30 a.m. From there, they went to nearby food truck Grub Truck, where they were captured on Twitch footage ordering food and chatting to other students. They then got a ride from home from an unnamed private party, a sorority service, to arrive back at the King Road home at around 1:56 a.m. The two surviving roommates were also out that night and arrived home at around 1 a.m., police said. At around 3 a.m. or 4 a.m., an unknown assailant stabbed the four victims to death with a fixed blade knife, police said. There were no signs of assault or on any of the victims. Police officers were called to a report of an unconscious individual at the three-story home at around midday on 13th of November. Inside, they found the four victims brutally stabbed to death on the second and third floors. Goncalves' dog Murphy was also found in the home, unharmed, not in a room with any of the victims. Investigators have been able to rule out both a man caught on camera with Morgan and Goncalves at the food truck and the person who gave them a ride home as suspects in the murders. The two surviving housemates who were left unharmed and appear to have slept through the murders as they slept on the first floor of the home have also been ruled out as have Gonclave's former longtime boyfriend and other friends who were in the home where the 911 call was made. Did you hear what I just read? I remember this in the beginning, but they have changed so many truths. They're saying they were unharmed and appear to have slept through the murders as they slept on the first floor of the home. Why do you think they had to move one of the roommates to the second floor? Because they needed eyewitness. The police, they needed an eyewitness. So they moved one roommate from the first floor to the second floor to say that now we have an eyewitness. That's why the statements don't match. That's why the time does not match. I remember them saying they were asleep on the first floor. But when that affidavit came out, that PCA came out, Brett Payne's PCA, and they put the one roommate on the second floor. Now do you see why I think it's a police cover-up, that I think police officers did these murders? Can you understand my thinking? In the beginning, the two unharmed roommates, they were on the first floor. This article is stating it. But in the PCA of Brett Payne, they placed one of the roommates on the second floor. When they placed the roommate on the second floor, it's unbelievable that the alleged possible killer walked past her, let alone the language. Ironclad in black. That's law enforcement. It's like law enforcement is creating a scenario. I'm here to help you. That's law enforcement. It was originally reported that the two unharmed roommates were on the first floor. When the PCA rolled out, that's when it was discovered that allegedly one of the unharmed roommates was on the second floor. And then we heard of the big, he walked past me. I heard all of these things. It's the lies for me. I almost need to take a picture of this because it's like getting these articles. You have to go back to the beginning to uncover all of the changes. And right here it's saying that both of the roommates were on the first floor. Let's continue. A sixth person listed on the lease and two men involved in an incident with Gonclaves around a month earlier are also not believed to be connected to the murders. And we're going to talk about that sixth person on the lease that we never hear anything about. We don't know that person's name. We're going to talk about that person. Just want to finish this article and then we're going to weed it all out. Moscow police revealed details of the incident on Monday, saying they may have been the stalker reference Gonclaves made to friends and family. Before her death, the 21-year-old had complained that she believed she had a stalker. Moscow police said that in mid-October, around 1 month before she was murdered, there was an incident involving two men at a local business. One of the men appeared to follow Gonclaves inside the building, and as she left to walk to her car, police said. Neither of the two men appeared to make any contact with the 21-year-old, and both have since been identified and spoken with detectives. Police said that the two men were attempting to meet women at the business and that they believed the incident involving Gonclaves was isolated and not an ongoing pattern of stalking. There is no evidence to suggest either of the men were involved in the murders, police said. Despite the revelation about the incident, officials are still seeking tips about the stalker claims and are still unable to confirm or deny the existence of a stalker, as they are yet to determine who or what was the focus of the targeted attack. Now, 24 days into the investigation, police appear to be no closer to catching the killer. No suspects have been identified, no arrests have been made, and the murder weapon is yet to be found. Okay, Now, I have to play this. There's a link on the Hidden Horror Facebook page. It's a press conference that was done by the Moscow Police Department on November 16th, 2022. I'm not going to play the whole press conference. I'm going to go to the parts, and it's going to cover about 4 minutes.
My name is Chief James Fry of the Moscow Police Department. I'm going to be reading from my notes today because I want the information you receive to be extremely accurate. We know you have questions.
So there were, I'm Emma Epperly with the Spokes Interview. Hi. So there were other roommates who lived at that residence. Were the roommates home at the time of the attack?
There was other people home at that time, but we're not just focusing just on them. We're focusing on everybody that may be coming and going from that residence.
So since they were home, was it a hostage situation?
No, it was not.
And then they didn't call it into police, so were they injured?
They were not injured, but like I said, we're still following up with everybody that could have been in that area.
And how can you say it's a targeted attack if you don't have a suspect?
Like I said, we take the totality of the situation. We try to make the best bit of information we can with everything that comes in, and then we make our decision off of that. So at this time, I'm not going to expand upon that. But like I've said, we do have a suspect out somewhere, and we are looking for that individual to solve this.
Hi, Rachel Sun, Northwest Public Broadcasting. I just want to clarify something you said earlier. Over the past couple of days, the information that we've been getting is there's not a threat to the public. And earlier I heard you say you can't be assured that there is no threat. I just want to clarify what your stance is on that at this time.
So we still believe it's a targeted attack. But the reality is there's still a person out there who committed 4 horrible, horrible crimes. So I think we got to go back to there is a threat out there still, possibly. We don't know. We don't believe it's going to be to anybody else. But we all have to be aware of our surroundings and make sure that we're watching out for each other.
Okay, and then one other follow-up. I know you said when the call came in, it was for an unconscious person, and also that was a stabbing. It seems, just from an outside perspective looking in, like that would be not the first thing a person calling in would think.
You're right. But the report that we got was that it was an unconscious individual. It wasn't until our officers arrived on scene, went in to do caregiving check on the individual who was unconscious that we found the scene that we found.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Heather Roberts with ABC News. Just to follow up on what she asked, so the other 2 roommates were there at the time of the attack?
All the information we have from our investigation is that yes, they were.
Okay, but they were unhurt.
That is correct.
So is there any explanation as to why it took so long then for someone to call 911? You have surviving witnesses to an incident at 3 or 4 in the morning, and the 911 call didn't come until noon?
I don't think I ever said that they were witnesses. I said they were there. So, we don't know why that call came in at noon and not in the middle of the night. Would have we loved for that to have happened? Yes, but that's not how it took place. So that's why we're investigating everything still to try to pull all the pieces together.
Were they one of the people, were they the 911 caller?
At this point in time, I'm not going to divulge who our 911 caller is, just because I want to keep the integrity of the investigation at this point, okay?
Okay, and last question, are you able to tell whether the same weapon was used on all 4 victims?
That's why we're having the autopsies done. The autopsy will confirm that, and hopefully.
Okay, stop it there. About 4 minutes. Now, I get to now put all of this information together to demonstrate to you how much eyewitness testimony is not reliable. Now is the time for me to put it together for you. First thing, in the beginning, as I've already stated, both surviving roommates were supposed to be on the first floor in those 2 bedrooms on the first floor. Now, does this matter? Absolutely. Because if you're on the first floor, how do you then get to Brett Payne's affidavit saying you're on the second floor sleep? How do you get to any of that information to say someone walked past you and to give the description that you gave, which is allegedly ironclad in black? Moreover, hearing the mumbles, the cries, saying that you heard third floor movement and thought Kaylee was playing with her dog Murphy. How do you say that you heard the comment, I'm here to help you? Who's fashioning this narrative? Because you were supposed to be on the first floor. That's what came out initially. Until Brett Payne's affidavit came out, that's all we knew was that you were on the first floor. And going back to this again, he's saying that when they asked why, when the reporter said, so you have surviving witnesses, and Chief Fry immediately comes in and says, I don't think I said that they were surviving witnesses. I said that they were there. This is why I'm going to do the video on the police and how they're misleading. How they're misleading the public. I need a piece of paper. I have to make a note real quickly. And I need something to write on. Back of this. That's just another example. I can't get enough of this. If you never said they were surviving witnesses, then why in that PCA of Brett Payne, we have a whole story now? And that person moved from the first floor to the second floor, and now they're a witness. But at the press conference on November 16, 2022, you're saying that I never said they were witnesses. But now you look at the PCA affidavit of Brett Payne. Now they're on from the first floor to the second floor. And now we hear walk past me. We hear the cries. Kaylee playing with Murphy. We hear, I'm here to help. It's law enforcement, man. This is why all of this is going to come together. This is my belief that it was a police officer or several police officers from that Moscow Police Department that did these murders. I have reason to believe that. If you look at that Elantra, we know that at the Banfield, the police had a white Elantra there. When they were questioning, trying to see if they were underage drinking, they were in a white Elantra. This is just steps away from 1122 King Road. Steps away. How many officers was in that white Elantra? How many? know if I need to replay this part again, but there was a point where there was question, were the residents home at the time of the attack? Chief Fry said there were other people at the home at that time. Who is considered other people? She asked, were there residents? Were the people that lived there, were they home? It's a simple question. He doesn't answer her question. He says, there were other people at the home at that time. Don't believe me? I'll prove it to you.
Distance of all the resources we have to get a final answer. Thanks, Chief.
So there were, sorry, I'm Emma Epperly with this Books on Review. Hi. So there were other roommates who lived at that residence. Were the roommates home at the time of the attack?
There was other people home at that time, but
Stop right there. It's a simple yes or no. It's a simple yes or no. It's a simple yes or no. Were the residents home at the time of the attack? He doesn't say yes and he doesn't say no. He says there were other people home at that time. Who are they? Who are they? I'm not going to even go over the part about the targeted attack. They knew it was a targeted attack from the beginning. They didn't want the community to be in an uproar. They didn't want the community to have fear. If you know another law officer killed these 4 people, you're not looking for something. You already know who it is. How can you say it was a targeted attack if you don't know who the assailant is? If you know it was law enforcement, you don't need the community to be afraid. You don't need to be in an uproar and have all these things going on when you already know who the killer is, in my opinion. The lies, the misdirection is astounding. It's astounding. Let me get to my points, because I have specific points. I have detailed notes, and I have to do this because it just involves a lot. The first thing that I want to do from all of the information articles that I read, we know that law enforcement were looking for the whereabouts of Ethan and Zaina between the time frame of 9 p.m. to 1:45 a.m. They had asked for people to provide details to contact law enforcement to let them know where they were. They knew between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. that they were at the fraternity house at the party, but they didn't know in the beginning between 9 p.m. and 1:45 a.m. the whereabouts of Ethan and Zaina. But does it make sense if you have sat down with the 2 surviving roommates and one or both tell you, they say that they weren't together that night, but they both came home around 1 a.m. I'm going to get to that point. That's point number 2. But point number 1 is, or maybe I have to make that one and come back to this one because I just lost it. If one of the roommates is saying she was at the fraternity party and she saw Ethan and Zaina until 1:45 a.m. until they return home. Until 1:45 a.m. But we know that they return home at 1:45 a.m.
There's a link on the Hidden World Facebook page.
I'm trying to see. Sorry about that. We know that she's saying that they were at the party from 9 p.m. to 1:45 a.m. But we know that that doesn't make sense because why is law enforcement looking for their whereabouts, asking the public, asking people to contact the police for Zaina and Ethan's whereabouts? But if you have a surviving roommate that places them, put eyes on them from 9 p.m. to 1:45 a.m., why are you soliciting the public for Ethan and Zaina's whereabouts? It doesn't make sense. And my next point is we know it's untrue. We know it's not reliable information because what do they keep telling us? They keep telling us that the two surviving roommates, even though they weren't together, they were out in the Moscow community separately, but they both came home by 1 a.m. Well, then, if they were out in the community separately, how could that one roommate who's supposed to be home at 1 a.m. be able to tell you that Ethan was at a fraternity party with Zaina until 1:45? It's conflicting. It's contradictory. Moreover, if what I found out months ago from Zaina Coroto's dad, that he talked to her at midnight and she told him that Zaina and Ethan were at home watching a movie, is I can't confirm it. I can't find it. But I took notes. I wrote that down. I wrote the date of his interview down. I can't confirm that now. But at one point I had read that and I made a note of it. But my whole point is, it cannot be true if they're supposed to both be home at 1 a.m., the two surviving roommates, when one of them is saying Ethan and Zaina were at this party till 1:45 until they came home. If these two unharmed roommates were already at home at 1 a.m., they can attest to where Zaina and Ethan were and they were somewhere else. And the two roommates weren't together, allegedly. It's the lies for me. It's the contradictions. Is problematic. Can anybody else, if you're at a party, if you're at a fraternity party, wouldn't other people be able to confirm that Ethan and Zaina were there outside of the two surviving roommates? You're at a whole fraternity party. Other people had to see them and notate the time. It's just not true. I think, as it was said over and over and over, they had no clue after 9 p.m. where Ethan and Zaina were. They knew they were at that party from 8 to 9, but after that, we don't know. We do know that it was a reported fight, but nobody talks about the fight. Was it at the fraternity house? Was it somewhere else? I've seen video of Ethan and Zaina going into an apartment the night of the murders, allegedly. Do I know if it's true? No, that's why I don't talk about it. I don't bring it up. But it plays into law enforcement struggling for weeks to figure out where their whereabouts were. And then to conveniently now have one of the surviving roommates say they were there at the fraternity house till 1:45 a.m. Well, you have no way of knowing that because you reported you were at home at 1 a.m., which is a separate location from the fraternity house. It's not true. Again, we're looking at eyewitness testimony, how unreliable it is. I want to go over something else. And I've said this before. I want to know if either Ethan or Zaina's cell phones were recovered at the scene, and were they reviewed, and were they able to use location data information to figure out their whereabouts that night, the night of November 12th into November 13th? Can they glean where they were? What were the text messages? What were they doing? Were they online? Where were they at? Where were they at? I noticed that when I read those articles, and this is just a little caveat leading a little bit away, but when I read those articles, the medical examiner wanted us to believe that in line with what the news was reporting, which was this statement, all of the roommates, including Ethan, were at home by 2 a.m., and either sleep or in their room by 4 a.m. And the coroner wanted us to believe that when they found the bodies of Ethan, Zayna, Kaylee, and Maddie, that they were asleep in their bed. But we know it's not true. We know it's not true. How do we see in Brett Payne's affidavit that when he came onto the second floor, he could see Zayna's body from the second floor? How is that in line with the coroner saying that all of them appear to be, at the time of the attack, in their bed and sleep? Did the coroner go to the crime scene? Did she even go? Did she go to the crime scene? Because if what Brett Payne said in his written affidavit was true, how could the coroner legitimately say all of them appear to be in their bed sleeping when Zayna wasn't even in her bed? She was more so in the doorway with defensive wounds. Her father reported Kaylee and Zayna, they had defensive wounds. It appeared that they fought against the attacker. So how are they in their beds? Did the coroner even go to the scene? How can you tell me? How are you going to make me believe? This is another thing. I told you from the beginning that if a person has defensive wounds, it is highly unlikely that they're sleeping. We know historically that when you're asleep, you don't have enough time to fight back against a knife attack. We know that Zayna was up because she was online about 4:12 a.m. It never made sense to me what the coroner said, because when I compare it to Brett Payne's PCA, he's saying he saw her body as he came upon the second floor. That's inconsistent. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't jive. It doesn't jive. Coroner, with your experience, you're 5+ hours later after the 911 call, and you want to tell me they were in their beds and it appeared that they were sleeping, but Zayna's body, per the affidavit, is in the doorway. He could see her body as he come to the second floor. You want me to believe that Kaylee fought back, had defensive wounds, when it's come out recently that she was sitting up in her bed, if that's true? Was the body put in the bed? Because if you're fighting, struggling, you're not going to be sitting in the bed with these defensive wounds. You're fighting back. All the lies. What is the purpose of this cover up? Who are you protecting? Again, what do I keep telling you? Law enforcement. Why is the coroner lying to us? Why? Why would the coroner lie to us? You tell us these kids are sleeping in their beds when Zaina's body is in the opening. When you come up to the second floor, you can see her. Well, if that's true, why did the alleged roommate on the second floor, who said initially they were on the first floor, it's another damn lie, but say we put them on the second floor, why didn't you see Zaina's body? Brett Payne saw it when he came up the steps, because there was an encounter. There was a battle either in the room or near the room or in that hallway. And when the battle was over, she fell in that area. And when he came up the steps, he could see her body. So if the alive roommate on the second floor is saying that this person allegedly walked past her, why didn't you see Zaina's body that was viewable from the steps per Brett Payne? All of your stories, all of the inconsistencies, it doesn't make sense. They're not jiving together because it's created lies. Who are you covering up for? That coroner can't say these kids were in a bed sleeping. I never believed that Kaylee was sitting up in the bed and she's stabbed over 50 times allegedly. What would be the need to stab someone that many times if they're asleep? Because people that are asleep, they don't have time to respond. That girl was woke. She fought back, and I'm sure she had extensive defensive wounds in the upper body, the chest, the hands, the arms, and probably her head. She might have been placed in that bed, but that girl was up fighting. I'm sure if they had pictures of the blood, we would see it. But guess what we know? We know we didn't see any DNA evidence, any blood when they tore that house down. We didn't see any walls cut out, any floors cut out. So where was all the blood? In this gruesome quadruple homicide, we didn't see any of it. Was there a crime scene cleanup? Did the people that came to the house that the two alive roommates called, did they clean the crime scene up? Or did the police pay for a company? Or did the families pay for a company to clean this crime scene up? It doesn't make any sense. It would be blood everywhere, on the ceilings, on the walls, on the floor, on every item. You're not returning these items to families. They're covered in blood. They don't want these items. It's blood splatter everywhere, in the creases, on the floor, in the items, on the walls. You're not going to return this stuff to the families? That's what made me think maybe the crime scene is not 1122 King Road. Maybe these kids were unalive, killed, murdered, massacred somewhere else. They cannot even account for the 5 hours between 9 and 2 where Ethan and Zaina were. Are they on the video? Are they on that camera across the street from them? Because we know now the coroner may have not even went to the house. Because why would you tell us that lie? that they were sleeping in their beds. It's so much contradictory information, and these are professionals. This is police. This is the coroner. This is the medical examiner office. How did they all get it wrong? They messed this case up. They lied to us. They misled us. And what about the sixth roommate? They never talk about the sixth roommate. And noise started happening saying, well, maybe they're a witness. Maybe they survived. Maybe they were in the hospital. We don't know. We were told stories that sixth roommate never moved in the house. We were told stories that the sixth roommate moved out of the house. We don't know. We don't know if there is possibly a snitch or an informant, and they're getting people and creating this story, getting people behind this story, changing all kind of information, creating facts, just outright lying. Because how can we even rely on what these two eyewitnesses have to say when we don't know, were they on any medication? Were they using any drugs? Were they intoxicated or drunk that night? Why did it take so many hours to call 911? Why? When everything happened, when the murders were happening, and if you were in the house, you didn't run, you didn't call 911, you didn't go get a weapon, you didn't run out, try to get away, you didn't go to a neighbor's house, you didn't get in your car and drive away, you didn't confront the person, you didn't go check on the other roommates. Didn't you see Zaina's body? If you were home first, if the two unharmed roommates were home first, they knew it wasn't a party going on in the house. The house would have been dark, supposedly, where nobody was there. You knew it wasn't a party going on that night. They were the first two people to get back at 1 a.m. So you know the person that walked past you wasn't part of a party. You would have heard Ethan and Zaina come in allegedly at 1:45 if you came at 1 a.m. and you would have heard Kaylee and Maddie come in at 1:56 a.m. You knew it wasn't a party going on. You knew this person walking past you wasn't part of a party and they were leaving. You never called for help until you called whoever you called over, which we still don't know, and you took hours and hours and hours. You want me to feel like you fainted, you passed out, you were shocked, you had hours. Say they came over at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. The call wasn't made till almost noon. That's 2, 3, 4 hours. But you want me to believe you passed out and you were shocked? You already found their bodies. You already had people come over. What were you doing all these hours? It's the lies for me. I don't believe anything in that PCA. I don't believe the coroner, when she messed up the manner and cause of death. You don't know what the difference with manner and cause is, and you're the coroner. Then you tell me these kids are sleeping and one is almost in the hallway area. See, all of you couldn't get together to create these lies. You have inconsistencies. The two live roommates can't say that they saw Ethan and Zaina to 1:45 at that party because they were allegedly at home and they weren't even together. They want us to keep pushing that time frame back. They told us the murders were between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. in the beginning. And now they're trying to tell us that they used one of the surviving roommates' phones to then say the murders happened between 4 and 4:25 a.m. Where are you getting that from? How? In what way? How? Because you gotta place Brian Koberger in that area. And if you look at the 2 to 3 a.m. time frame, you can't do it. You just can't do it. So you push the time frame back where you can try to place his car on that video. You're framing him. You're framing him. And everything that has come out of this investigation have been changed, have been altered, have been constructed to fit the narrative that he is the killer. When really a more plausible, more believable, a more probable killer, a more likely killer is the Moscow police officers that were in that white Elantra. They're at the Banfield. All the lies. We haven't even heard the 911 call. It's been over a year. We don't even know how many weapons were used, if there were multiple weapons. From what has come out from one of the families and comparing the wounds of each victim, they are describing multiple weapons, more than one killer. Because the weapons aren't the wounds aren't the same. One is more gaping. You're gonna have more bleeding out, and then the others are different. You have to think about it all. These two surviving roommates, they weren't injured. They weren't hurt. They were asked, police asked them, why didn't they call the police? And the police want to tell us they weren't focusing on these two surviving roommates. They weren't focused. They weren't thinking about them. They weren't considering them. They weren't looking at them as a potential assailant. They can't even explain why they said it was a targeted attack. But I'm going to deduce they didn't want the community to be in an uproar. They didn't want to put fear out there. They had a vandal alert. They took that down. The community warning was dropped. They said this was a targeted attack. And we know if the K-bar knife is the alleged weapon, we know who used that type of knife. We know it was military and law enforcement. Did a whole video on the K-bar knife, how it was used for combat, for protection in war. Did the coroner even see the crime scene? Or did she just make all that up? She didn't even know the difference between cause and manner of death. She said that they were stabbed in their bed when they were asleep. But we know that's not true. My question is, did she even go to the crime scene? She's incompetent. I'm not even sure why the families have not sued. I don't know what they're waiting on. I feel so bad for them. They've deceived them, they've misled them, they've lied to them. They demolished the house with no urgency. That was the plan from the beginning. They had repeated attempts to demolish the house, to destroy that evidence. It was no compelling reason. There's no urgency to demolish the house. They didn't think about preserving the evidence, thinking about the jury. Why would the university support this? They own the property. The university has been working in tandem with law enforcement from the beginning, and they never had the best interests of the 4 victims at hand, and they were Idaho University students. Their lives mattered. They were students too, and they mattered, and they deserve justice. How do you go over objections of the family? The community cannot heal until the killer or killers are brought in. And I want to know, why did that officer take that picture of Kaylee's ID? If you're given a warning, why did you need the picture of her ID? They have you on film, on video. I'm never going to forget that. Nothing was going to stop these killers. They weren't afraid. They weren't concerned about getting caught. They weren't concerned about someone getting away. They weren't concerned about someone calling 911. They weren't concerned about the police coming. If someone had run out of that house and ran to the band field, the police were there. They weren't concerned. They had no fear, no gripes about what they were doing, what they were there to do. And you got to wonder why. But if you're law enforcement, if it's police officers on site, whether they're there for drugs, whether they're there for money, whether there is the stalker idea, you weren't concerned. You were going to do this anyway. Kaylee was there. She hadn't been living there, and she was there that night. Her car was outside. You took your opportunity. You had already taken a picture of her ID. She was back in town. She was posted on social media, and you took your opportunity because you might not get it again. She was moving. She was leaving Idaho. She had employment in another state. She wasn't going to be there. So you had to move quickly. You didn't care that you saw all those cars parked in front of the house. You didn't care. You weren't worried. You went into that house. You took the time you needed with no fear of being found, of someone calling the police, or being stopped. You are the police. And you would have killed them all if you had to. But you didn't. For some reason, these 2 surviving roommates that were on the first floor, they neither ran, they didn't try to get away, they didn't climb out a window, they didn't scream, they didn't text, they didn't post on social media, they didn't call 911, they didn't call a friend at the time of the murders. They didn't call somebody that lived close. They didn't go next to a neighbor. They didn't go to the Banfield where the police were. They didn't get out. They didn't try to get away. They didn't try to go get a weapon to protect themselves. They didn't intervene. They didn't say anything. They didn't stop. We got 3 more videos. Crime scene cleanup. What was in the 911 call? And why did the police keep so much about the murder and the crime scene quiet? You're getting the idea. You're getting the point that I'm drilling home, hopefully. That, in all honesty, we're past the point where the police can turn back. We're past it. Clearly, we are past that point. Kohlberger, his case is proceeding on. And if we don't talk about it, if we don't keep talking about it, we already know what was possible to happen. I'm not going to let up. I'm not going to stop searching for justice. And I hope that you feel the same way, to keep these 4 victims in the forefront of your mind and thoughts as we discuss this Idaho 4 quadruple murder, a heinous, horrid, awful act of violence exacted on these 4 young people for no just cause. Thank you for checking out this video and the series. I appreciate your time that you're spending with me, and I want to always remind you to stay smart, stay safe, stay savvy, be well, all my friends. Take care. Be well, everybody. I will see you in a video soon. Okay? Bye, everybody.